Joining me is Veronica West, writer, creator, showrunner, executive producer. And executive producer on behalf of Hello Sunshine, Lauren Neustadter. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
We're all color coordinated. That's nice.
I like our style.
We like our style.
Thanks for coming, you guys.
So let's talk about James. James is back. Talk to me about deciding when to bring James back. What were those conversations like?
Well, we always knew James is like an integral part of the DNA of the show. And one of my favorite parts of season 1 was their kind of like push and pull relationship. So in season 1, James was very forgiving of Sophie. He always wanted to see the best in Sophie. But I think the way she ended things allows him to really show a different side of himself and become this like agent of chaos in her life, which you really get to see in episode 3, which not many people have seen yet. So we wanted to delay it a little bit and make people wonder how he was going to come back, what his attitude was going to be. But then once we revealed him, it was really fun to launch into his point of view for this episode.
And I love how mad he is. I think Ollie Jackson Cohen is so good, and he and Gugu have this unbelievable electric chemistry between them. And so I think it was such an interesting choice to not just have him be enamored of her, but instead to really have him feel so betrayed and like have all of his emotion fueling what he's going to do next. And I do think episode 3, which basically you guys and we have seen, the world will get to see it soon. But, you know, it's really, I think, such a fun episode because you don't know what he's going to do next. And it's exciting to see what is coming.
The thing that gets me, I especially felt this after the first season, and it's sort of interesting to see how the feelings are shifting as we get further into season 2, which is, and I hear from other people that watch it, is I don't know who to root for. I don't know whose side I'm on. I don't know who I want to come out of this okay. And I assume that's intentional, but talk a little bit about like having that sort of detachment or having people sort of suspicious of the characters we're supposed to be following along, and how do you get your bosses on board with that?
Well, that's never been a problem. I think everyone's been excited about Sophie as a character who was deeply flawed from the beginning. That's how it is in the pilot script. And when Hello Sunshine read the script, you know, there was never this question of like likability, you know. I think with Sophie, because we have this premise where she wakes up in her own life and she doesn't know who she really is, we allow her to get away with a lot of pretty big sins in her past, you know, but the Sophie that she is today is somebody we're fully on board with because we absolutely resonate with her journey and her, you know, need to find out who she was and what's going on. And I think it's been a theme through a lot of my writing, just like seeing the gray in people and just never thinking that people are black or white or good or evil, but that everybody makes mistakes and that people do fucked up things for good reasons, you know? And I think the characters in the show, a lot of them exist in that world, especially the Huntleys, especially, say, Quinn, you know, who does some things that are very questionable at the beginning, but then we see, especially in this episode, you know, how much he loves his fiance, how much he is protective of his sister, you know, and I love that feeling of wondering, should we be rooting for this person, and having the audience debate that.
Lauren, how did you feel about it? I mean, knowing the way audiences watch TV today and how early you got to get them hooked, or how you want to make them feel at a certain point, how were you thinking about it?
Well, I think that one of the things that I love the most about the show is how complicated and unexpected these characters are. I think that Veronica and our writers' room have done such an amazing job of creating these nuanced, multifaceted characters. And exactly as you said, nobody's entirely good, nobody's entirely bad. You think somebody's bad, and then all of a sudden something happens where you find yourself deeply caring about them and empathizing with them and being like, whoa, I did not see that coming, which I think is one of the real merits of this show. I think it's rare to have so many twists and turns and so many cards being turned over consistently inside of a season. And I think especially, look, I mean, what we knew was that the first season was a slow burn because we were putting these pieces together with Sophie and we were trying to understand along with her who she was. And now this season, we really put our foot on the gas and we're going. And as we're going, we're taking you on what I think is a really fun and extraordinary ride. And I think by the time that you get to the finale, you're not going to believe how much you care about people that you thought were not great. So I think it's really kind of awesome to watch. And I think it's something that really sets the show apart.
Well, talk a little bit about that. I mean, the first season follows Sophie, played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who's like, you know, this woman that's suffering from amnesia after a suicide attempt, and in sort of trying to piece together her life, she's discovering this web of lies. And like you said, we're trying to figure out who's in the right, what's going on. And this season, she travels to London to sort of unpack her past. And it feels like a different show within the show. It feels like a reset of sorts. The world opens up. There's more characters. Talk about creating and sort of planting the seed with Eliza. Like, how much did you know what that story was going to reveal for the story?
Well, the moments with Eliza, the memories of her and being called Tess are in the pilot episode of the show. So I think for me, creating the show, I knew that one season would explore who Sophie is in this moment, you know, what her marriage is, what her present day life is like. But to have any legs for the series to continue, there needed to be other chapters unveiled. So the original script was actually set in London and Sophie was American. But when we cast Gugu, she's British, and it seemed perfect to have her play British in San Francisco. So there was always this embedded idea of Sophie has crossed an ocean to run from her past, you know, and that there would be a second chapter and hopefully someday a third of these moments, you know, these different identities that everybody has in their lives. You know, I feel like you look back on yourself in college or yourself in your 20s and you think, wow, that's a different person. I don't even recognize that person, you know? So each of these seasons are meant to like explore a chapter of Sophie's life and the mistakes she made then.
How, like, in the writer's room, are you thinking about her as Sophie or as Tess? Are they different characters or the same?
No, they're all the same character, and I think the core question of season 2 is, you know, who is Tess Caldwell and who is the real Sophie, and those answers become apparent in the next 25 minutes of screen time. So keep watching.
But for you, I mean, she's on this discovery of who she is, but do you know who she is, or are you discovering that with her?
Well, I think we definitely, as a group of collaborators, the writer's room, everybody knows exactly what happened in her past and why she became the person who made those mistakes we revealed in season 1. So season 1, if that's about who Sophie was, season 2 is really about why. And then at the end of season 2, there's the cliffhanger that opens up another chapter, you know, that would be amazing to take a couple years and explore that.
How much, like, what comes to you first? And for you, Lauren, I mean, we're so used to, with the Hello Sunshine brand, the adaptation of books, and I'm curious how much you were sort of wanting to know the outline of where things were headed, or was the discovery part of the appeal for you in something like this?
Well, what's interesting is, you know, obviously we gravitate toward books often, but we also, I think, just love great material. And so our agent, who represents us on the TV side, called me and said, it was during COVID, I remember it very vividly. I feel like for all of them, when you get the call that then becomes a television show, you always remember the call. Like, I remember where I was. Anyway, Sonia called and said, I never tell you that you have to drop everything and read a script, but you have to drop everything and read a script that I'm about to send you because you're going to lose your mind for it. And she sent me Veronica's pilot, which she had written on spec. And I dropped everything and I read it and we got on the Zoom and we had just finished the morning show, the first season with Gugu. And Reese and I thought she was so spectacular. And so we were determined to find a show that she could really be the center of, right? We wanted to have the spotlight on her and we wanted it to be ongoing and all of these things. And when I read it, I was like, it's amazing. And also it's perfect for Gugu. So then I sent it to Reese and she was like, it's amazing and it's perfect for Gugu. So then we sent it to Gugu and Gugu loved it and she said, I'm in, and the rest is history. So it's really been, I think, incredibly exciting to develop it together. And Gugu has been a true partner to us in figuring all of it out. And I think it's equally thrilling. You know, it's certainly thrilling when you get a novel and you're like, okay, how are we going to do this? And is it a movie? Is it a beginning, middle, and end? Or is it chapters? Is it episodes? How are we doing this? But you kind of know where you're going. With this, it's been such a great adventure to just have conversations about where we want to go. And sometimes we know where we're going and then somebody has a great idea to go in a different direction. And it's like, ooh, love that. And so, you know, it's really a great, I think, journey to be on together. And we've also always talked about, you know, the notion that in an ideal world, this would be sort of a who was she? Who is she? And what is she finding out? And then who does she want to be? Right. And so there's uncharted territory still. And I think, you know, we love this character so much. I think she's Sophie and she's Tess. But we just love her and we love spending time with her and sort of uncovering all the things that she is.
Do you call her Sophie or Tess in the writer's room?
Only Sophie.
Only Sophie.
I don't know if that's a spoiler, but yeah, she's Sophie. And the Tess identity, you know, is something that really is tied into the mystery of the Huntleys and of why she left London. So that's really what we're answering in the next episodes 4 and 5.
How much, okay, I'm always curious with writers. I know for me, I need to know the beginning before I can get anything done. Like, even if I have an idea of where I want things to go, if I don't have the beginning, I'm just looking at a blank page. I know other writers start with the end, which seems diabolical to me, but some people start in the middle. For you, where did you start? Did you have your end in mind first or the beginning? What?
Well, it depends on your circumstances in terms of television production, you know, and in season 1, we raced into production and there were a lot of amazing things about that, but we were still writing this season as we were shooting it through the very end, which is very common, especially in the older models of making TV. In season 2, we had the opportunity to finish all the scripts and then go back again and really tie some pieces together, you know? And I think as much as you do know where you're going to end and as big a plan as you can have, and we always have grand plans, when you read it and you get there and you read 208, you realize, oh my God, it'd be so great if we set this up in 202. Oh my God, this would be so great if we, you know, streamlined this character and added this moment. And I think having that luxury of a little extra time is what helped us make season 2 feel satisfying and elegant, as I hope it does to you guys.
Well, to expand on that a little bit, walk us through how this idea came to you for this show. What was the genesis of it, and how has it evolved from that sort of initial idea to what we're seeing on screen?
Well, it's very much, you know, kismet between Gugu and Hello Sunshine and Lauren and myself, you know, kind of all watching these same sorts of shows. Obviously, amnesia is a trope, you know, this is something that it's a story as old as time, and we've seen this story told so many ways, but we haven't seen it really told from a female point of view, and we haven't seen it told in a really feminine style, you know, in a show that's unapologetically feminine, and season 1 really is that version of that. And, you know, in a bubble myself coming up with that, as opposed to these guys, you know, I know you and Reese were having conversations about like the Bourne identity, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely were having conversations. I think a lot of times at Hello Sunshine, we talk about what are the opportunities for women to play roles that they've not gotten to play yet. That's so much a part of the mission of our company and why we do what we do. And we always talked about the Bourne Identity. We talked about Memento, like how great are these movies and how great are these roles for these guys to get to play? And wouldn't it be so wonderful if we could find a role that was distinctive that offered those opportunities for a magnificent actress. And so I think when we read this, we just thought this is a treasure trove for somebody. And obviously, Gugu was our top choice. So it was very nice that it all came together as it did.
Yeah, and season 1 is really that intimate, more psychological drama. And as we had a break between seasons and were given the opportunity to continue, we continue to raise the stakes and get even closer, I think, to that kind of spy thriller energy, and would probably continue to do so in a potential season 3 and just continue to raise the stakes for Sophie's character.
The first season came out in 2022, so there was a bit of a lapse. Obviously, we had the writer's strike, and it was interesting talking to writers that in that period, how that distance from the show sort of made them rethink things or make them make tweaks. And you talked a little bit about like refining things. Was there something that you tweaked or a change that happened in that gap, that like in the way you saw the story, or now that you had more time with it, where it settled?
Quinn.
Yeah,
I think that was fun to just turn up the dial on Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
It was exciting to just, Phil's spectacular, and just to really play around with him. James is an agent of chaos, but so is Quinn. Mm-hmm. And so just to see that crackle that he adds to everything, like I think it's just been, I feel like that was something that came out of that time.
He adds a new dimension to the show, and it is, I know he's famous for comedy, and there is a little malevolence and mischievousness to his character, but he also ad-libbed a bunch, and I was surprised to seeing some of the director's cuts, like some of the lines that he added, and just like loved it. He has such a distinct flavor, and he really surprised us, and some of the funniest lines and the best lines in the season are his.
That's funny. We know that there's the Eliza Tess mention in the first season. Did you know the extent of what that backstory would be in terms of the Huntleys and everything? And talk about expanding the world with these characters like Quinn and...
Yeah. Well, it's hard to talk about it without giving too much away. Mm-hmm. Spoilers for episode 4 and beyond. But yeah, when we started the writer's room for season 1, and we knew that we're about to go shoot this pilot that has this girl, laying on the ground, calling her this name, our writer's room in season 1 started talking about, okay, well, what is the solution to this? What is the backstory? And I actually spoke extensively with Gugu and Millie on set in season 1 and made sure everyone liked where we were going, and it informed the way that they were playing, especially Gugu having those memories, and the great scene with Eliza in season 1 where she's an apparition, but, they're having this emotional conversation. So they both knew during those scenes what we're about to find out in episode 4.
So episode 4 is where things pop off, big time.
It is a huge turning point, and, in the writer's room, having all our grand plans, it could have been the season finale. It could have been a twist that we used at the end of the season, but there was so much story to tell afterwards, and how crazy things got between the characters, and how all the relationships in the show are really turned on their head at the end of episode 4, especially Millie and Gugu's.
But to Veronica's credit, she knew about that episode 4 twist when she wrote the pilot and had a conversation with me and our amazing executive Ashley about it. She knew that this was coming. Mm-hmm. So it was always in there. It was always embedded.
And there's things that Sophie says in season 1, to James in the flashback episode, and episode 106, deep surface fans, deep cuts. Mm-hmm. But she says, I just want to even the playing field. I want everybody to get a fair shot. These were things they knew the answer to where Sophie came from and what traumas made her this way when we were writing season 1 as well.
Not to put you on the spot, but... Uh-oh. I love that one of your earliest, maybe your first credit is Ugly Betty, which talk about a show that knew how to dole out the twists and turns. I'm curious how that sort of informed or sort of set you up for a show like this. I mean, and in terms of pacing or knowing when to do something.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about, the telenovela aspect of Ugly Betty in reference to the twists and turns of Surface before, but that is where I was trained. I think the most special thing for me about working on Ugly Betty was that I was basically the same age as the character, as America was at that time, and I just found some old photos. Like it was really special to be able to have that opportunity as like a 26-year-old to go make TV, and very supportive environment in terms of staff writers producing their own episodes, being on set, doing rehearsals with the actors. Like I would not have been able to become a showrunner if I had not been supported in that way as, a young writer.
Because what are the conversations like about how to pace the questions and where things are going when it's like a good idea to bring in someone like James for at the end of episode 2? Like, what are those discussions like when you're dealing with a show that's maybe like 8-10 episodes versus like an Ugly Betty that's in the 20s?
I mean, for me, it's always coming from story, and just trying to make each episode satisfying and exciting and surprising to people. I don't want people to be able to see what's coming. So we always do want to make sure that the episode doesn't end where you expect it to, I hope, but it doesn't go, it's not very diabolical.
How about in this era that maybe it's not the era that we're in, but there's a lot more of it, which is, whether it's White Lotus or Severance, there's a lot of active viewing with the audience. They're trying to piece together or unlock the mystery or figure it out before we get to it. How do you feel about the level of engagement that sometimes happen? Like, is there like a point where it can be too much and takes away from what you're trying to accomplish? How do you feel about it?
I think fans are great. I think you can't, how exciting if people are invested enough and care enough that they're trying to solve the mysteries before they unfold in the show. Like, what a compliment, and what a victory. So I think our job is, if we're really doing it right, our job is to keep everybody on the edge of their seat the whole time. I think the shows that you named do that. I think Surface does that. And I think that's our challenge, right? Is how do we sort of give the audiences what they want and also kind of surprise them and keep them invested emotionally and otherwise. I think that's the gig.
Veronica?
I love it when people have theories, and 1 out of every 5, I'm like, "Ooh, that's great. We should have done that." Like I love a good pitch session. I always say TV writing is a team sport. It's not like what you get into if you want to be the auteur or just be by yourself in a room. It's something that at every step of the way you have creative partners, and to me that's super exciting. So the fans having, like Lauren said, enough investment in the show to have theories and be working on the mystery, like, what a huge compliment.
Because are you ever like, they're thinking about things I wasn't thinking about? Like
100%. Everybody thought the therapist was the bad guy in season 1. I was like, oh, should she have been? Such a great actress.
The color of the house in season 1.
That was intentional.
Okay, yes. But like, there's sometimes things where you're like, I wasn't putting that much thought into it, right?
I think we put a lot of thought into absolutely everything.
I was going to say there's always a lot of thought that goes into everything. But I think that's the thing that's so amazing about this medium, right? Is like, it's entirely subjective and all the ideas are interesting. It's choose your own adventure. And we chose a particular adventure, but fans might have chosen something different. And isn't that exciting?
Well, the story started in San Francisco. We're obviously in London. But will we be heading back? Is that something you can tease?
Back to San Francisco?
Yeah.
Well, I think in a potential chapter 3 of Surface, I think it'd be interesting to see some familiar faces from the past. I think there's a lot of stories to mine about Sophie having faked her death, and nobody knows that but James, So there's definitely something juicy there to see some familiar faces, but there's still a lot to explore with Sophie's past. In London.
What's an interesting note that either Lauren or Reese has delivered to you?
An interesting note. Do you remember any interesting notes?
I think all the notes are interesting.
Yeah, they are. I remember compliments.
We flipped the location in the pilot because we knew that we wanted it to go to Gugu. So I do think that was a big shift.
That was.
I remember
that was
that,
the
and it was also kind of awesome because it was a great dry run for how we would collaborate with one another. I think it's also, for me as a producer, I will say I always want to make sure that it's going to be a good collaboration and that the flow is going to feel great for everybody. So I think having a big note to start off with was a great dry run for like, how's it going to go? And we had so much fun, and the spec pilot, obviously, as previously stated, was so good. But then the process of flipping it and making it right for Gugu and watching the precision with which Veronica made those changes and the thoughtfulness in every single thing and the excellence in the execution, that was very exciting. And it was the beginning of that collaboration. And so I think, that was a fun part of the journey for sure.
Well, especially for Hello Sunshine, I mean, it prides itself on telling female stories from female storytellers. How does this elevate or fit with the brand that you're putting out there, this story with this character?
Well, we always say that everything we do at Hello Sunshine, we want a woman to be at the center of the story, and in an unconventional way, we want to showcase her as the hero of her own story. And I think Sophie really exemplifies that. She's a very complex hero. She's deeply imperfect, but she has a big heart, and she cares, and she's not really always honest, but she wants to understand the truth. And I think she's a character we haven't seen before. So that's the real way that she exemplifies our mission, is like this magnificent, I love this picture of Gugu so much, and I just love Gugu so much. This magnificent actress who's capable of anything. We give her so much to do and so much to play. And we also invite her into the conversation as a true partner. So when we talk about things, we're talking about them with her, and her ideas are as valuable as anyone else's ideas, and she's helping us to shape this character. And I think it's just incredibly inspiring and rewarding for all of us to be a part of that collaboration. But it really, this show exemplifies our mission in so many ways.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to echo that it's been such a delight to work with Gugu, and she has been instrumental in just coming up with the season stories, and then all the way down to the tiny little moments on set. And she's a pleasure in every way.
Her wardrobe is just insane too. It's not fair. How about knowing that you're working towards an end game? What do you think is a satisfying ending for a character like this? Is it redemption? Is it figuring out her identity? How are you thinking about what's the satisfying end goal here for her?
Well, I think, the Sophie that wakes up in episode 101 is very, very different from the person that she had been. She, in some ways, she's more introspective. She's not fearful, but she's naive to the world and to the mistakes that she's made, And the Sophie she was in the past was shrewd and a chameleon, and so capable. And watching her, for me, turn back into that person in a lot of ways. And in season 2, she's the investigator and the investigation. She's a detective in her own story. And I would love to see a version where she got to the same end point that she had been. She realizes all the skills and the myriad of things that she's capable of, but decides to do it maybe in a different way.
I'm just really nervous you're going to kill the journalist.
Callum.
What?
Don't kill the journalists. We need us now more than ever.
We love Gavin.
That's true. I'm a huge journalism fan.
Thank you.
I did major in journalism for a week.
Nice. Okay, for a week?
And changed to film.
Okay. Before I wrap, is there a question or an answer that you are most excited for audiences to discover this season?
Which Huntley is your favorite? Which one's good and which one's bad? Because I feel like it's going to flip on you guys a little bit, and I'm curious if you end up feeling the same way that I do at the end.
Yeah, I feel like if we asked you right now what you thought of the Huntleys, and then we asked you after the finale, I would be very interested to compare and contrast.
Who's your favorite right now on episode 3?
I mean, Eliza.
Yeah,
Right now.
I love the musicality to her character and just the depth that Millie brings to that performance. It was a pleasure to write that and see her bring it to life.
Well, Lauren, too, I know that you initially wanted to be an actor, right?
This is really talk about twists and turns. This is really taking a turn
Well, initially I was like, well,
into
will
a
we
dark,
ever,
dark place.
will we ever get a Reese cameo? But now I want a Lauren cameo. Any
I
chance?
can do that. I
Yeah.
can do that.
I'm very happy on this side of the camera. I definitely dreamed of being an actress as a child growing up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I did all the plays and the movies of the week and all the things, and I came out here to act, and then I realized that's hard. And there's a lot of people that are very, 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 very talented. So it's literally my dream come true to get to work with Reese Witherspoon and make these shows. And it's an interesting thing, I think, for all of us, just to find the place where we belong in this world. And I loved being a part of a team on a set always. I loved making people think and feel. I always talked about, like, I loved changing a room when I did a play, that, like, you know that you've changed the audience a little, and what a gift that I get to spend my life hopefully changing the room, and also creating opportunities for tremendous artists to tell their stories and incredible actresses and actors to play roles that they wouldn't have gotten to play otherwise, and paint on such a magnificent canvas, and also really and truly the team sport of it. Just getting to work with amazing writers and directors and crews, and teams, Team Apple here, like to work with marketing and publicity teams and figure out how to make an audience care about a show that you care about. It's just a really extraordinary gift to get to do this job. So while I did act, I don't miss it, and I'm very happy with where I wound up.
Which character would you have wanted to play?
Which character would I play in Surface?
Yeah.
I mean,
Grace.
Sophie.
Not Tess.
If you're
Sophie.
gonna do it, go
Tess?
big.
Eliza.
No, she's always Sophie to me in my heart. I understand that she's Tess to the lady in the first episode that was like, you said your name was Tess. But Sophie.
Sophie. Okay. You?
I think, writing all the characters, that's weird, but there's a little bit of you in every single character, even the creepy ones.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing how things play out. For season 3, a possible season 3, do you foresee yourself resetting in a new location? What can you tease about where you're thinking of
What
heading?
can you tease?
We don't have anything to report on that.
We don't have anything to
now,
report.
But I think
Big ideas, guys.
the world would definitely expand, but I think we've kind of found our home in London and the surrounding areas, and I think we could expand the show into new worlds without leaving London, but we'll see.
We've had fun kind of going full throttle, and I think we definitely daydream about ways to keep on that path, and really fun twists and turns.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you guys
for
for
watching.
coming
Thank you
out.
so
We
much,
appreciate
and thanks
it.
you guys. Thank you.
Okay, now they're really going to tell us how this season ends.
Gotta watch. Thanks, guys.
Thank